All right, Matthew, welcome to episode 48 of the Performance Advantage podcast. This week we have Dr. Emma O'Connor, ex-professional cyclist, new mom, my wife, PhD sports scientist, and all-round killer ultra endurance athlete. Great to have her finally on the show because James was asleep. Matt and I just have a general catch-up with all things going on, releasing a new course or courses, so stay tuned to find out what those are. As always, a special thanks to our sponsors, EnduranceTrainingHub.com and SmartMTBTraining.com. Even if you think maybe you're not in the market for a training plan, these sites have great information, resources available, and is a great way for you guys to support us, support the show, help us keep putting out great content and great interviews. So check them out. EnduranceTrainingHub.com, SmartMTBTraining.com. All right, Matt, everything going well on your end?
Yes, things have been going actually not that great. I'm getting over my cold and it's been really annoying. And after Crankworks and then having a cold for a week, it's been like 2 weeks since I've gone riding. So now we're on the other end, just a bit stuffy. So today is my day to hit the trails.
Oh, so you're being very diligent about not getting out.
Yeah, well, I want to feel better soon. So I know, like, if I try and get out and do some exercise when I'm not feeling great, there's just kind of no point. So I have definitely learned over the years, like, okay, if you don't feel great, lay low, get better, and then get back to it. So this has given me lots of time to, well, drink coffee, which is one of my other favorite things to do. I went fishing, and I've also spent a lot of time dialing in more of the software and updating the BreakAce website. So the BreakAce website, in my opinion, is looking really good, and it gives a great description of what we do. And then on the other end, I've been working on contracts so we can make this a thing ASAP. So we've had lots of developments in the last week with the BreakAce. Check out breakace.com. Also with Smart MTB Training, I have a new update where I'm offering members Training Peaks training plans. So if you are a Smart MTB Training member, you just go into the member upgrades tab in your account and you can purchase any Training Peaks plan that I have available, which I have like 15 or 20 of them. And you can get that training plan for $9.99, which is great because lots of people already use Training Peaks, and it's a software that they know. So you still get access to everything you already get as a Smart MTB Training member, but you also have this added benefit. Whichever Training Peaks plan you want, you can get it. So you automatic syncing of smart trainer workouts, which is great. Automatically sync to your Garmin and other smart computers. So I just thought it was a no-brainer.
Cool. Sounds like you've been busy. Busy online.
Yeah. Smacking the keyboard and clicking the mouse like all day. So yeah, it's been pretty good.
Sweet. Yeah. I've been back, Matt. I'm back into it. Back training.
Yo.
Yeah. The motivation is starting to wear a bit thin, you know, after you bang out like a couple of weeks of training, because you're like, yeah, I'm back. And you're like, oh man, the mornings are feeling earlier, and the sessions are feeling a bit longer and the body's feeling a bit heavy. And so this block of training, Matt, I am being more proactive about my rest. Okay. So.
Wait. Come on. You weren't proactive about your rest before?
Honestly, if I'm being real honest with myself, I was a bit half-assed about it. Like, I would plan my rest weeks as I do, like for my athletes and in my training plans. Because, you know, either every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, depending on the cycle, easy week, down week. But I'd get a little anxious after about, you know, I'd have Monday off and be like, yeah, Tuesday would be a bit easier. Then after that, I'd feel like I was losing a bit of fitness. And so.
Oh, no. But you know how fitness works.
Look, I know, okay? I know how these things work.
Look, maybe you need someone on the other end here for you. Like, looking at your training plan.
I don't, yeah, I mean, see, I do, just for a lot of these reasons. But then I also have been working, on myself, I guess, as a project of fitness, ever since I started. I've never had a coach. So to relinquish control of what I've been working on for so long, I think would be quite difficult for me. But what I have been working on with Jay Barrett from Jay Barrett Performance Psychology, Mental Skills Training is a lot of these things. So how to work on this with myself to gain.
Because it's not like you don't know that rest is important.
No, and part of why I want to go through this is it helps me understand what athletes are going through. Because at general fundamental level, we're all kind of the same, right? In terms of what's driving us to do this and self-motivation and continuous improvement and all of that. And, so yeah, it's like making note of these experiences is, I think helps us. I mean, you've been through it, man.
Yeah. No. I've never had a problem taking rest because after the first time I took a rest and I came back stronger, I realized how important it was. So that has actually never been a struggle for me. Probably more like thinking I needed too much rest when I maybe should have been more tired more often.
Yeah, I don't like, it's not like I'm just going out and doing way too much. It's just I'm just half-assing the actual chilling. Like maybe there's a full rest day, but I thought, I'll go out and do 30 minutes anyway. Because I want to go socialize with the club or, when you, there'll be things I think where you don't, if they're not in your sport, say you go swimming, but you're a runner or a cyclist, well, Matt, you're not going swimming, but, no. Then you're like, that doesn't count because that's not my sport. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, do you count running
as 100%
as training?
Yeah, like running is like the hardest training that I could do because every time I do it, I'm wrecked. So if I'm having I really wanted to go running this week because, May has been running and I was like, I can keep up and I know it's not that hard and I really want to do it, but that's not what I need right now. I need rest. So I didn't.
Alright, man, you're better than me. It's fine.
Well, if you need any accountability when it comes to resting, just let me know and I will make you feel really guilty if you don't rest.
All right,
I got your back.
I'll send you my Training Peaks account actually, so you can link in. Be my guide. Alright, Matt, this is an interview we've been wanting to do for quite a while. It's my wife, Dr. Emma O'Connor, PhD sports scientist, ex-professional cyclist. She's represented New Zealand at multiple world championships. She's won a stage in a world tour event and has numerous titles all around the New Zealand cycling scene. She raced professionally in Europe for 5 years. And that's really what I was quite interested to share with the audience, because it is a very different experience than one might seem from the outside looking in. And then transitioning from cycling into running, from professional sports into professional science, and then into being pregnant, motherhood, and potentially getting back into a very high level of sports. Emma was quite nervous, I think, to come on the show. She's listened to a few episodes and she's like, this isn't like just talking to you. This is talking to Will and Matt, the podcasters. So she's a little bit nervous, but we got her to open up on a few things. And I think, you'll find it incredibly interesting.
All right. Emma O'Connor, welcome to the show.
It's Emma.
Emmer. Emma.
Emma. Yeah, Americans have a hard time with that.
Emma.
Hi, Matt.
Hey. How's it going? It's good to actually finally have you on. You know, you've been close to the show, listened to every episode since day one.
No, she doesn't.
No.
She doesn't.
Oh, okay. But
No,
you know...
haven't been doing any long runs, so...
Okay.
Haven't been listening, sorry.
Okay. But you know quite a lot about the podcast because you are Will's baby daddy. Or baby mama.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So we've only got as long as James is currently asleep.
Okay. So James is sleeping. You guys called me and you're like, okay, we can do the podcast now. Okay, hurry. So here we are. So Emma has had a long history as an athlete, one of New Zealand's top cyclists. And we just wanted to kind of pick your brain about sport, being pregnant, training while being a mom, training while having a PhD and doing your PhD. And also, like, how the heck do you put up with Will every day? So Emma, I can't imagine that growing up you're imagining that you're going to be a professional athlete, a sports scientist, doing a PhD. But somewhere along the way, it happened. It was all kind of happening a little bit at the same time, one after the other. So why don't you just rewind the clock and tell us how it all got started for you?
Well, I started cycling at school. It was a new sport at our school, and for some reason I decided to join. For that, I wasn't really that sporty, so it was kind of out of character for me. But it was kind of the first thing I ever did that I was just, like, good at it straight away. And so just, like, got into the New Zealand team.
Wait. Is that good at it straight away? What was, like, your first cycling experience at the track with your mum?
Yeah, so, in order to ride for the school team, you had to do this course out at the track and learn how to ride a track bike. And so they said, if you've got a bike, just bring it out. If not, you can hire one. So I was like, yep, I've got a bike. Turned up with my little kid's mountain bike, on the back of the car. And then we went over and looked at the track, and we were like, because it's the Counties Manukau track, it's got about a 30-degree gradient. Looked at the track, we were like, I don't know if we're going to be able to ride that on there. Surely that's not where they actually ride bikes. So yeah, that was my introduction. Ended up hiring a bike.
Yeah, but what'd you do? You and your mum?
Oh no, that's a different story.
I remember
there
was a story where you guys, like, rocked up in the car and you just, like, didn't get out of the car. You just drove home or something like that.
There was another time we turned up with that bike. That was to, like, a bunch ride. And we turned up with the same bike, and we saw everyone getting out of their cars with, like, these flash-ass road bikes, which I had never even really, like, seen one of them before. And yeah, so we saw, like, everyone in their Lycra, everything like that. And I was like to Mum, I don't think I should get out. So we just sunk down in our seats, like, so that no one could see us, through the window, and just waited there in the car until everyone had left for the bunch ride. And then went home. But then later that day, because it was in the morning before school, one of the girls was like, I saw you turned up for the ride this morning, but, like, you guys just didn't get out of the car. I was like, yeah,
okay.
Let's go home.
So you weren't just, like, it took a while to kind of get into it, but I guess it didn't take long. Probably you got the right bike. You weren't embarrassed anymore. You went to the group rides, and then you were just, like, good at it?
Yeah, so I ended up hiring a bike, $400 for a triple chainring machine. And, after about, I guess, 9 months, one of my friends was going down to the TA tour, which is like, a really big junior tour. Back in the day, it used to be the selection tour for the New Zealand teams. And I didn't actually know that. I just thought we were going down to a fun race. But we both ended up getting selected for the New Zealand under-17s. And,
So how old are you? 15, 16?
16.
Yeah.
And when raced over in Australia later that year.
So you're going for a fun race.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, cool, I got selected for New Zealand team.
Yeah. And then, just sort of progressed from there, was in all the junior teams and, started when I was 18 or 19 and went into the seniors. I started getting coached by a guy called Eddie Bright, who was starting up pretty much the first women's cycling team in New Zealand. And so we had a group of about 6 of us. And so being part of that team, I got to do quite a few more races and got the opportunity to go overseas.
Sweet. So from that point, you were pretty much, so you're still in the juniors, you're racing overseas, and you're like, yeah, this is what I want to do?
Pretty quickly, yeah. Yeah, I was never really one who, knew what I wanted to do after school, so once I became good at cycling, I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to go overseas and, see how I compare to, the girls over there.
How did, the university thing come into it?
I guess it was just something, like at the school that I went to, it was just kind of something you did. You went to university after school, so, I was always just going to do both. And, when you're training for cycling, you're pretty much only training once a day, maybe twice. So you've got a lot of spare time, and I'm not really good at just sitting around doing nothing, so.
Not good at it.
Yeah. So.
I'm not good at it at all.
Yeah. Having, something to do when I wasn't training was pretty good.
Cool. So what was your first season over in Europe? When was that? Would you have been straight out of the juniors? Just straight into the pro ranks?
No, it was the year after that. So I was 20. And the first year I went to the Netherlands, and I was over there for 3 months, and I was staying in this tiny little town, could barely even call it a town, in the north of Holland. And if anyone's ever been there, you'll know that it's completely dead flat. Even the bridges that go over the canals, they just rise up and down. There's no hill whatsoever. And I'm a hill climber, so it was pretty tough the first season. And I think I probably would have packed it in after that, because I just really didn't enjoy the racing, the flat racing. But towards the end of the season, I got the chance to ride with a different team from my one, in a stage race in France called the Tour of Limousin. And I think I finished around 20th or something out of a field of 170, and it was just awesome, big hills and kind of what I had imagined the racing to be like over there. And so that sort of gave me the encouragement to keep going, and ended up getting into a better team after my results in that race. So, yeah.
How did it compare? Obviously, when you're going overseas, you're like, oh, I'm going to rate for a pro team. You must have had something in your head, oh, maybe I'm going to be this good, and this is going to happen. and then you went over there and you're living, is that when you're in the caravan? Or?
No, that year I was in a farmhouse.
Okay. But you're in a farmhouse, racing is like, you're like 50 kgs, 160 centimeters. It's dead flat. The women there are like 90 kgs and about 4 meters tall. So, it's like a completely different world to New Zealand. Like,
yeah.
And how did it compare?
Well, it's just things that you would never have to think about in New Zealand, like your positioning in the bunch, are a really big thing over there. So it's kind of, you have to, in your first season, you almost have to just learn the style of racing before you can even think about getting results. Because, for example, like, if you're a sprinter, it's not good enough to be fast if you're starting at the back of the bunch. Like, you have to learn how to race again. And with the hilly racing, so the racing that actually suited me, it was, like, not necessarily that the level was so much higher, but it's just that rather than being one of the best sort of 2 or 3 climbers, there are maybe 40 people who can climb just as well as you. So it's just harder.
Yeah, how was that mentally to deal with? Because you come from, so in New Zealand you would have been like a big fish in a pretty small pond because it's a small country. And then you head over there and you're still the same person, but there are tons of people just like you. But so suddenly you're not a standout anymore. How was that to deal with? Because I know that happens to a lot of people, especially in New Zealand. They're really good, and then they head overseas, and there are lots of people like them, and that's a little tough to deal with, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was really difficult. Like, I don't think in the first season it wasn't that bad because you don't have any expectations of yourself. But, yeah, in the seasons after that, I did find it difficult when I'd come from my season at home, where, like, it was a lot easier just to even be in the position to, like, get in a breakaway up a hill, and then to go over there and it's just, you're just one of, like, many who are at that level. So yeah, it is difficult.
Yeah, so how many years were you racing over in Europe?
5 years.
Okay, so 5 years. So you would have experienced a lot of different races, a lot of different terrain. Were you on different teams every year?
I had my second and third year were on the same team. That was another Dutch team. And that was a really good team, in terms of, like, the management, and my teammates and everything were really, really nice. And I ended up changing from that team only because I kind of got sick of racing on the flat all the time. I wanted to go somewhere hillier. So then I went down to a team in France, had a year with them, which was a bit of a nightmare.
Why was it a nightmare?
Just in terms of team dynamics, it was not a very well-run team.
Well, how does it work? Like, most people don't know.
Yeah, so
how does the team work? Like, how many riders and everything?
So I think, so in most races you can have 6 people riding, but the team will generally have about 12 in it. And normally what happens is that most people are from the country that the team is based in, but then they'll have some foreign riders, and the foreign riders will often stay in like a team house kind of situation, which for me, I stayed in some pretty weird places, caravans, farmhouses, etc.
Like living in a camper.
Yeah, in a holiday park.
Oh, okay. For 3 months,
Yeah.
6 months or something like that?
6 months,
Wow,
yeah. That
okay.
was actually okay though. I didn't mind that.
You're with a friend, like another
Yeah,
Kiwi,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, the farmhouse was a bit more challenging. But, yeah.
Like with animals or what? Like, what kind of farmhouse are we talking
What are you
about?
picturing, Matt? Like, I'm a farmhouse, I'm like a loft above, like, just hay bales and like sheep and cows.
No, I was picturing like a nativity scene and you were like in a manger.
No, it was just a normal house, but...
She had to fight animals for her bed every night.
No, it was more so that I had to go and have lunch with the family each day who were living in the main part of the farm. And to get there, I had to walk through this part with all the cows, like part of their house with all the cows and this massive dog. I don't know types of dogs, but it was huge, like probably the same size as me. And quite early on in the season, it bit me. When I was going out training, I was on my bike and it bit me. And then so I was terrified of it, but the family sort of thought that was quite hilarious, that I was scared of their dog.
Yeah, obviously.
So,
that's so funny.
So, like, they wouldn't help me get through the part of the house, like they wouldn't put the dog away, so it was always kind of scary going to lunch and trying to avoid this dog and going over when it was like in a different part of the room. So, but anyway, it's kind of nothing to do with the team.
But it's the outside thing, like there's the racing and there's like everything else.
Because you're away from everything you know, right? You're away from your family.
Yeah.
And this was like 1995, so we didn't have like Skype or Facebook Messenger.
Oh, we should probably say, when was it?
2009 to 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we had Skype, but...
And you could, at that stage, you could speak French.
I could speak French, yeah. Yeah, so going back to the French team, what was the question? Asking why it was, how the team worked.
It sucked, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So basically what happened with this French team is that, they were a UCI team, which is like, I guess a professional team. But with women's cycling, there didn't used to be any kind of standard that you had to adhere to be a UCI team. You just had to pay however much money it is to get registered.
Not much, so like 1,500 euros or something like that.
And so this team I don't really know why they had become a UCI team, but they had a bunch of French riders, and then they had these 4 foreign riders. There were 2 Kiwis, 1 Scottish girl, and 1 Belgian girl. And we didn't realise it, but the reason that they had put us in the team was because they wanted to do all these races outside of France, but none of the French riders wanted to do them. So the minimum number of people you can have to do a race is 4, so they had the 4 of us. So we basically had to do every single race that the team had entered itself into. So myself and the other Kiwi, Jen Whitson, we were living down in France at our team manager's house. And every second weekend, the team had entered us in a race in Belgium. But as well as the team members not wanting to go and do this race, the management didn't want to do any of the races either. So they told us, like, we're not going to take you to the races, but you have to do them, because otherwise, like, I don't know, the team have to pay a fine or something. So for us to get to these races, it was 3 buses and about 4 trains and the Paris Underground as well. And we had to do all of this while carrying our bikes in a bike bag, because you had to have your bike in a bike bag to go on the train. And so we were doing that, and then the next day starting like a UCI top level race on cobbles and absolutely exhausted. Then the next day we'd go back to France, race in France that weekend, And like this went on for probably 2 or 3 months. So yeah.
Why did you go to that team?
Because I wanted to be able to do some of the races they were entered in. I don't know, you just, like, you hear stories like this, and you kind of think, like, they're probably not true. And you just want to be part of a professional team. Like, it sounds pretty cool, being a professional cyclist. And you want access to all the races, so...
So what are they offering you?
Well, you have to be in one of these teams to be able to do the races.
Yeah, but you're going into it, so they're obviously providing board.
Yeah,
and
so...
the end of the travel, you weren't paying for that, were you?
We were paying for these, trips to Belgium.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Yeah, so they were providing us with accommodation. They were supposedly providing us with transport, but it was only when the team car was actually going to the race. So that wasn't all the time. But like, in saying that, that was definitely the worst year. Like the other years, the teams would provide like food and, travel to all the races and accommodation and stuff like that.
But this, it's not, uncommon for another, I've seen other stories like that,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, so I would imagine at some point maybe, you're not sure what you're paying for. The team's paying for some things. You're paying for other things. Maybe the salary's not crazy good. Maybe there was some drama a few times. Is there any interesting stories there?
Yeah, how did that pan out? I mean, that season kind of... But you stuck with it. Like, what year was that? 3rd? 4th?
4th, yeah. Yeah, so kind of got to the middle of the season and was pretty exhausted, obviously, but then second half of the season was kind of like my, where all the races that I was good at, were going to be on, so I was like pretty motivated. Then again we had the problem of the team like wanting us foreign riders to be in every single race. So I had this 3-week period where I did, so I'll give you the timeline. I was in the Netherlands, drove 8 hours across Germany to get to a race in the Czech Republic. So that was a 4-day race. Did that, then that night drove to the airport in Prague, which was about 3 hours away. Flew to Paris. Couple days later, my teammate picked me up and we drove across France. That was another 6 hours. And then started the Tour of Bretagne the next day. So that was another 4-day race. Then that night drove to another part of France, about 3 hours away. Stayed there for a couple of days, then drove somewhere else, another sort of 3 or 4 hours, and started another 4-day race. So within a 3-week period, I raced 12 times and was in I don't know how many countries, 4 different countries, I guess, all driving to get between them. So yeah, it was just kind of the same pattern with that team, just driving and racing, not at your best, feeling bad about your results, but having no control over preparing properly for the race. So yeah, that's pretty much women's cycling for you.
Yeah, and what about, but you're not done after that season?
No, so at the end of that season, I was going to go back to my team that I'd been with in 2010 and 11.
So there's a Dutch team. They're really good.
The Dutch team, they had gone up another level, so they were now a UCI team. And they had a much better race program. So signed a contract with them, and then came back home for the summer, and I think like just a couple of days before teams had to pay their money to the UCI to become professional teams, one of the major sponsors pulled out.
Was this around the...
Yeah, this is around the time that Lance Armstrong went on Oprah and announced that he had been doping. So, yeah, that didn't have, I don't think, that many ramifications for the men's cycling, but for teams like mine, it did affect our sponsors. So that team ended up, disbanding. And so I was left in December with no team for the next year. So at that point I sort of thought like, oh, I'll just stop. But at the time I was on the long list for the Commonwealth Games, and that was only a year and a half away. So I decided to keep going and ended up being lucky to find a Spanish team, which was also a UCI team. And yeah, so kept training for the summer.
Was that summer you raced in the New Zealand tour?
No, that was the one before.
Oh, yeah. Because you won the stage.
Yeah, so that was probably my best, well, it was my best result that I ever got. Was in 2012, I won a stage of the Tour of New Zealand, which was a big international race that used to be on in Palmerston North. And
I say this because I was there at the finish.
Yeah, this is
Fanboy.
pretty much when me and Will first met.
Yeah. But this is like 2011, 12?
2011.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a bit of a story behind it because the day before, or 2 days before, so the first day of the race, I had quite a good stage, so it was a 4 or 5 stage race, and finished in the top 10, and because of my position I got selected for the doping control. But that day had been super hot and I'd gotten really, really dehydrated, so I crossed the line and I was just like, when you're just absolutely like so thirsty. And so had to go straight to the doping control, and they have all these bottles, like sealed bottles there for you to drink. And I was like, oh, well, I probably shouldn't drink water. I should have something like with something else in it. So they had Powerade there, and I hadn't had Powerade that much before, and started drinking heaps of it, the blue one, obviously, and it didn't agree with me.
Powerade, Matt, not Gatorade.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
New Zealanders.
didn't agree with me at all. So it was just basically all going to my stomach. My stomach was just like puffing out like a pregnant woman. And then ended up throwing up all the Powerade that night, just throwing up all night. And started the next day, felt absolutely terrible. It was a really long stage. It was like 140 Ks or something. And it was just so painful the whole time. Got to the end, I was in tears. Said to my mum, I don't think I can race tomorrow. And she said, oh, well, just treat it, your recovery, as if you are going to race. So, ate as much as I could, had a good sleep, woke up the next day feeling fine, and started the race, and over the first, hill climb, we call it the Queen of the Mountains, we got a group away of 10, so I was in a breakaway off the front, still feeling good, and feeling kind of surprised that I was feeling good, so, I thought, since I'm here, may as well, get as much of an advantage while I'm still not feeling sick. So, attacked off the front and got away with an Australian girl, Amy Bradley. And we ended up, so that was about 60 k's into the race. It was a 120k race. And we ended up staying away, and with 20 k's to go, we still had like 2 minutes. We were 2 minutes ahead of this group of now 8. And then they started chasing us. So we were racing back into Palmerston North, and so you have your cars, your team cars behind you. So our 2 cars had been sitting at the back of the convoy for the last few days. We were the last 2 teams in the race. And they were now at the front behind us. And in my car was my mum. She was on the phone to my coach, who hadn't been able to be there. And then in the other car was the Wheelworks team from Wellington, who are really, they're a New Zealand team, but they had this Australian girl in it. And they were just screaming out the windows and just willing us to get to the finish. And yeah, we ended up getting there with 20 seconds to spare, and I won the sprint. And yeah, so that was my best race that I did.
It sounds like you hardly remember it.
So how many years? Yeah. How many years all up were you racing professionally?
5.
5 years.
So then, but anyway, if we go back, so now you're what we were talking about before, you shitty experience kind of thing in the French team, but you still go back. Com Games is on the mind, and then where do you go back? Is that Spain?
Yeah. So went back to Spain, and that was.
And you speak Spanish?
I didn't speak any Spanish, so that was kind of the difficulty that year.
Were you learning it that year?
I was learning it, yeah. So I'm quite good at learning languages. So I did pick it up a little bit.
I think what you meant to say is you're quite smart.
No, but I'm good at learning languages. Yeah.
Okay, so you got 2 languages and a PhD. That's fine. Okay,
yeah. So I picked up a little bit, but I was in no way fluent. I couldn't really have a conversation. What made it more difficult was that I was living in the team house that year with the other foreign riders who
So what was this, a bus or?
This was the bottom part of a house, and it was basically just all these bunk beds in there. Bunk beds and trophies from the past 10 years that this team had been going. Because in Spain you get a trophy for coming first, second and third. And for the team award. And for everything you get a trophy. So the house was
America.
Yeah, just full of trophies and bunk beds. And I was living in there with 2 Russians, whose Spanish wasn't that good either, and they couldn't speak English. So it was quite a, the races we did that year were really cool, but it was quite a difficult year with just, living with people you couldn't really communicate with.
So what would you say then? Would you say that the dynamic between your team members and how the teams operated, would you say that was one of your biggest challenges?
Yeah, for sure. It was just in New Zealand, you would do everything before the race, everything that you talk about on the podcast to make sure you're ready, you'd eat right, go to bed early, all your training would be done how it should be. But over there, you're doing the biggest races that you'll ever do, and you can't do any of that stuff. As an example, with the French team, we would often be sharing a bed with one of our team members the night before the race. And
not by choice.
Not by choice. And that was especially in the first part of the season, when you didn't even know your teammates, it was pretty awkward. And then for breakfast being given Frosties and
what's
it was just
Frosties? Frosted Flakes?
Sugar coated cornflakes. It was just really, really frustrating to me knowing that I was going into the races not at my best, and I felt that I could do better if I was able to, replicate the conditions that I'd race under in New Zealand, because every year I'll come back to New Zealand and I would be a bit better, like I would be winning more races and everything like that. But then I'd go back overseas and I just couldn't translate it to the racing over there just because of everything happening outside of the racing. So it was pretty frustrating for me.
And then, so that was that year. That was it. That was the...
Yeah, so I had a pretty hard decision to make at the end of that year, because at that stage we were only 9 months out from the Commonwealth Games, and I did have a chance of going, but for me it was just not worth it anymore. And yeah, I just couldn't really face the thought of going back for another season, so yeah, ended up stopping, came back to New Zealand, did a couple of races that I hadn't done before but had really wanted to do, which was the K2 Cycle Classic and the Round Taupo, and won both of them. And then after that, I was like, yep, I'm done.
And so how hard was that decision?
It was super hard. Yeah.
Because I know, like, you didn't have the love for the sport anymore, but obviously people would spend put a lot of time into it.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest thing was probably telling my coach, because he had been coaching me for 6 years. But yeah, it was just what I had to do. So
yeah. And do you think where do you think? I mean, it's hard because it's hypothetical. But if you were in, like, if it was like New Zealand was Europe, do you think you'd just keep going?
Yeah, probably. Like, I was definitely jealous of my teammates who were able to live at home and then just, like, race on the weekends, stuff like that. Some of them still had part-time jobs, which I would have liked to have been able to have.
Yeah, because you're not getting paid.
No, you're not getting paid, but it's more so just that you're in such a bubble when you're over there and all you're doing is cycling. That's why I did the university stuff, because I found it really good to have something else that I was concentrating on when I wasn't training or at races.
What would be your advice to people like Kiwi? Like, we all have to do it, right? Where I say we, like, in terms of pretty much most individual sports people are going to have to spend time to try and, like, crack it, right? Because all of the World Series, unless you're sports specifically American or North American based.
Yeah, I guess I have trouble when people ask advice, like, around the whole cycling thing. Like, I would have trouble recommending someone to try and be a pro cyclist, but
Why?
I just think it was pretty hard, and, like, even though I don't regret it, and I got to go to a lot of really cool places, and some of the years that I was over there were really fun. I just don't know if I would really recommend someone else to do it, but
yeah,
I think things are getting a lot better now, with opportunities like the Zwift program, and New Zealand had a team that went over last year with Patrick Harvey, like a full New Zealand team that got to do some of the races. So stuff like that would be really cool to do.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that maybe you wouldn't recommend to be a professional cyclist, but you did it, and it made you who you are, right? Because I remember saying that same thing about doing a PhD. I was like, I said it to, and we can all relate to this because we did our PhDs together. I said to one of my supervisors, Phil, I said, I don't think I'd recommend doing a PhD to anyone. And Phil said, he said something to the effect that, yeah, but it made you like who you are. I was like, damn, Phil, like you're kind of right. Because like, he's like, you would be somewhere totally different. Which was such a like thoughtful thing for Phil to say. You know, he's like just this brilliant mathematician and he has this amazing insight. I was like, yeah, like you would probably be somewhere else if you hadn't spent those 5 years being a professional cyclist and going through those struggles, which maybe didn't seem so great, some of it at the time. But, you know, looking back, I'm sure those were some great experiences to have.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I wouldn't want to swap those 5 years for, like, going through the classic university, getting a job, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm glad I took the path that I did, but it was definitely more difficult than it seems.
From the outside looking in, like it
From
might...
the outside.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see. Well, so that kind of led you, somehow you got into this whole other path that is unreasonably difficult for the rewards, which is
Yeah.
a university research career. So how did that all happen?
So pretty much that was thanks to our supervisor, Steve.
Shout out Steve Stannard.
Yeah. So
For a little bit of context, Steve was, I guess he was all of our lead supervisor. And,
yeah.
And Robert Stannard's dad, who we had on the show. And we had Steve on the show.
Yeah. And so Steve is obviously a really keen cyclist. And I got in contact with him, I think in my last year of my undergrad, because I was having trouble finishing my degree because I was doing a Bachelor of Health Science, but a lot of my papers were practical and I was doing them from overseas, so I was struggling with like actually being able to do them. Yeah, so Steve helped me out with getting my undergrad finished. And then, so when I, was stopping cycling, I knew that I wanted to come back and do some postgrad study because the degree that I had wasn't really that good on its own. And I didn't really want to get a job. So.
There was more.
Yeah. So I got in, cause I knew Steve from how he had helped me out before. I got in contact with him and ended up doing my honours with him as my supervisor. And then, he gave me the opportunity to, do my PhD starting the next year with him as my supervisor again. And so, yeah, that's how it started.
Cool. So what did you do your PhD on?
So my PhD was around oxygen transport, the effect of antioxidants on oxygen transport during exercise, endurance exercise performance.
Antioxidants being like...
And the antioxidants that I was looking at, I had 2 new supplements. One of them was a protein bar, which was made out of chicken feathers. So chicken feathers are really high in certain amino acids that act as antioxidants. And so, myself and another PhD researcher, Yanita McClay, were, testing out this new protein bar for a company down in Christchurch. And so we were training participants up for 4 weeks and we had them eating the bars and they were having a protein drink as well and comparing that to a casein protein bar and drink as well and testing lots of different things, blood parameters, oxygen uptake, muscle mass, and exercise performance.
Nice. You did something at altitude as well, didn't you?
Yes, and then I had another supplement which was a pomegranate extract and I was looking at the effect of that on oxygen transport as well, and as part of that we decided to test it at altitude because that's a place where oxygen transport is limited, so we wanted to see if the supplement would work better there. So we had one study where we took a group of under 23 cyclists up to Turoa for a week for a training camp, and as part of that we tested them up at altitude. So we had a mobile lab, which was basically like this big box on wheels that we towed
AKA
up.
a trailer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but a trailer like doesn't describe it. It was just a huge box. And we had to take it up the Turoa Road, which is,
it's called Mountain Road.
yeah, very, very winding. And it was pretty scary
So this is
going
up
up there.
a glacier.
Yeah,
like,
Steve was
/
driving.
volcano.
Yeah, and the thing kept making all these beeping noises, being like, brakes have stopped working.
Oh, no.
Like the big overriding brakes in case we started sliding backwards. We had this guy over from Malaysia, who was helping us out, and he kept wanting to take off his seatbelt and like holding onto the door handle so that he could jump out just in case. But yeah, so we did get up the mountain and did some testing up there, which was pretty fun.
And the findings?
The findings. So, with the keratin one,
There's the protein one.
the protein one, it didn't really show what we were expecting with the oxygen transport, but we did find something really interesting, which was a massive increase in lean body mass, so that's like muscle mass, compared to when the participants were taking the casein protein.
So you can get
It's like
huge.
your normal kind of protein.
Yeah, so
right?
it was really interesting because the people we were testing were cyclists and triathletes. So they were doing a lot of endurance training. For example, one participant was competing in the K2 cycle race, which is a 200k bike race, followed by the Auckland Marathon. And they ended up doing all the training for that. They ended up gaining 3.5 kgs of muscle, which is like really unusual, I guess. So, I guess our finding from that one was it wasn't necessarily a good supplement for our athletes that we were testing, because endurance athletes generally don't want to gain 3.5 kgs of muscle. But it could be something that might be really useful for a strength-based athlete. So that was quite a cool finding.
Yeah, I mean, gaining muscle is maybe not that bad. Maybe enduro athletes should start eating chicken feathers or something like
Yeah,
that. Where
maybe.
Well, it was like they had, because it's not normally bioavailable keratin.
Yeah,
Which
so-
means you can't digest it. Right?
Yeah, so they'd figured out, the company had figured out a special process, hydrolysis process that could make the chicken feathers digestible for humans. And then they'd made it into this bar that was, like, the lady had just made it in her kitchen at home, so it was very, like...
Gnarly.
Yeah,
It
yes.
was rough.
So-
And like you knew if you were, the whole house knew if you were eating it, because you like, it was like baked beans on steroids, or chili, or curry, or whatever.
Yeah.
So delicious.
So I
or-
had, like... I had all the flatmates on the study, pretty much, at one time or another. So it was interesting for me, because I would know what supplement they were on, and they'd be complaining. Be like, you're not even on the chicken feather one. You're just on the normal casein protein one.
Do you think that being an athlete had prepared you well to be a scientist?
Yeah, for sure. Like, just in terms of, like, the self-motivation type of thing. Like, I know a lot of people have trouble with time management and, like, making themselves do work if there's not someone telling them what to do or when to do it, like going into a 9-to-5 job. But for me, because I'd done cycling at a high level since I was 15 years old, I've always had to manage like schoolwork and training, and just had to get stuff done, I guess. So that was the part that really helped with the PhD, because like if you don't do your work for a PhD, no one's gonna tell you to do it or do it for you. You just won't get it finished. So yeah, that was the kind of thing that helped me.
And then during that, you kind of were finished with cycling. And wanted new challenges. You'd met me.
Yeah.
We'd met earlier, but you were in my office.
Yeah.
My office.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. And, I was doing triathlon at the time. And so you were like, man, this guy is so cool. I'm going to
No, so somehow I got sucked into doing a few triathlons. I was hanging out with Will and Hamish, another friend who was doing triathlons. And, actually what happened was I didn't want to do cycling anymore. I was pretty over it. So I started doing some runs, and pretty classic for a cyclist. Like, you're really fit, cardiovascularly. So you can just go out and run like quite fast and for a long time, even though you've never run before. So I just went out and I think about a month after I started running, ran the Northern Circuit, around Tongariro, which is about, I think we did 35 Ks. And yeah, even
How
though
long did it take?
it took all day, it's like a
Alpine
7-hour
terrain, yeah.
run or whatever. Yeah, and so I was fit enough to do that, but my bones that had only been doing non-impact exercise for the last 10 years were not fit enough, so ended up with a stress fracture, the first of the stress fractures, the first of the running injuries, and so I couldn't run, couldn't bike, and so ended up swimming, and so I was doing a lot of swimming, and yeah, from there just kept getting injured running, and so decided instead of just doing running, I'll do triathlon, because you can do other types of training, and even if you can't run, you've always got something to do. So yeah, did that for a few years, did some half Ironmans, and then got sick of swimming.
And then ultra running.
Yeah, so then it changed to ultra running. That was something I always wanted to do.
So you've really eased into a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think with the triathlon, I think I did one standard distance and then went into half Ironman. And then, didn't want to do the swimming anymore. I was kind of over the biking. So I set the goal of doing the Tarawera Ultra, the 100 Ks. But I knew I wouldn't, at that stage, that just seemed impossible, running 100 Ks, which is kind of why I wanted to do it. It was just a big challenge that I wasn't even sure if I could do. So, started off with a 50K, then did the, Tarawera, the 87K event that they used to have, and then, so the 50K was in 2016, and then finally, 2018, I did my first 100K ultra at Tarawera.
And how did it, you were a professional, you were at the top of women's cycling, as at the tippy top. And then how did transitioning to, because you weren't immediately good.
No, so I guess now, since I've stopped cycling, I kind of like to do sports that I know I'm not the best at, because I don't really want the pressure of trying to go for a podium or anything like that anymore, which is why I'm not really interested in doing any road cycling races. But but I like doing running and adventure racing and multisport and that type of thing because like I say it's just for fun. Like I always do my best, but you can do it without anyone having expectations of you. And in the case of running and swimming, like I wasn't that good when I started, so you see massive improvements, which is pretty cool.
Would be, like, you've had a lot of injuries in running.
Yes.
We probably have, like, a number of our listeners are runners. Advice.
I feel kind of like I shouldn't be the one giving advice because I never take this advice, but like obviously as soon as you feel an injury coming, you should just stop running rather than like trying to run through it, which is what I always do.
Good.
That is a classic. That is a classic one.
Yeah, well the thing is like with cycling, you don't get injured ever. Like I've had 2 broken arms. And that doesn't really matter in cycling because you can just get on the wind trainer. So I've never had anything that meant I couldn't ride my bike. So when I started running and I started getting an injury, it was like, oh well, I'll just keep running and it will probably get better. But it doesn't. Generally gets worse.
So this takes you to your latest challenge, which is probably worth a whole podcast on its own, but you started training while being pregnant. And then you had a baby, and now you're back into training again. You had Jimothy.
Yeah. It's not his name. Yeah. So, yeah, training while pregnant was a bit of a journey. I guess at the start, I just kind of kept trying to do everything the same as what I was doing before. I felt like it immediately running got a bit harder, but not like significantly harder. And because you only gain weight slowly, you don't really notice it that much. So, like I guess in the first half of the pregnancy, I stopped doing like anything that was super long, or sort of stopped doing that. But yeah, I was still running up to 2 hours type of thing. And then when I was about 20 weeks pregnant, I did an event, a running event, half marathon, and ended up with a stress fracture, probably because, like, I didn't consider that what I was doing was that extreme, but obviously, like, since I was pregnant, all the nutrients and everything were being directed to the baby rather than to my bones, which got weak. And so from then on, running was kind of like, well, I had to recover from the stress fracture and never really got back into it. Like I definitely did still do some running, but not much. So kept biking. I didn't think I would mountain bike when I was pregnant, but I ended up still doing quite a bit because, like, I never really, I was told that I might lose a bit of balance, but I never really felt that.
Had balance.
Yeah, I never really had balance in the first place. Yeah, no, yeah, I never felt that I lost balance, and I just stuck to the tracks that I knew really well and that were easy. And I wasn't really worried about falling off because, like, it was sort of like, you know, I'd never fallen off on those tracks before. I'm going slow.
You spend like almost your adult life on a bike.
Yeah, exactly. I fall over much more often when I'm running. Much more often. And so kept biking until I was about 37 weeks pregnant, and then Jamie must have moved into a kind of a funny position and was putting a lot of pressure on one of the ligaments near my glutes. And so at that stage, there was about a 2-week period where I basically couldn't even walk until he moved again. So that was when I stopped biking and then was just swimming. Yeah, swam the morning that I went into labour. And yeah, I think it was good because I didn't gain a whole lot of weight, so I didn't feel super uncomfortable, and it was something that I could keep that was like normal for me, that made me feel good. And
So compared to normal, how much training were you doing?
oh, I can't really remember. I mean, I don't know if it was that I was doing less. Really, it was just I took all the intensity out.
Because one of the hard things was us trying to find information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I had this book on pregnancy and it said, you know, maybe you could go out for a 20-minute walk every second day. I was like, well,
No.
I don't think so. I don't think
Okay,
that's
thank you.
what I should be restricted to. Like, yeah, I'm not ill or like, yeah, I'm just pregnant. And, yeah, so I looked on the internet for like accounts from obviously professional athletes to see what they did. And yeah, there was not really any information out there, so I just decided to keep doing what felt good to me, and just stopping stuff if anything hurt or if I didn't feel good, pretty much.
Yeah, so how was the recovery then after you had Jimbo?
Yeah, so that's where I think the fact that I kept exercising was really helpful, because definitely compared to other people that I've talked to, I've had a really quick recovery. So I was back swimming, I think maybe 3 weeks after, 2.5 weeks after. Biking maybe a week after that. And I felt fine.
And when were you allowed to go biking?
Yeah, 6 weeks. But, yeah, I felt fine and everything was all healed. And, the running was the one that I've been really careful with and still am being careful with, just because of the jolting. I don't want any long-term effects from that. But with the biking and swimming, like it's not weight bearing, and yeah, I have a lot of experience with biking. I feel like it's just like something normal for my body to do.
So would you say you're back to your old self then when it comes to cycling?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's been how many months?
3, just over 3.
3 months, okay. Cool, so in terms of, like, that doesn't sound too bad, because, like, you went through a huge transformation for a really long time. You stayed really active during it, but, like, now you're just kind of normal again.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm normal.
Like, well, yeah, not to say that you were, like, not normal, but, like, you know what I mean, right? Like, your body went through a lot. But now here you are out the other side. You have a son, and like he's doing great, and you're also doing great as an athlete again.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing what your body can go through. Yeah.
Cool. So what's next for you?
Well, the Waka 100 is what's next for me.
So this is a non-competitive...
This is obviously a non-competitive event, so I've entered in the elite grade. Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. I've never done like just a mountain bike race before. I've done races with mountain bike in them, but this will be 100 k's of just biking, all in the Redwoods, which is the mountain bike park in Rotorua, our local forest. And yeah, so I guess I have no problem with the fitness side of things or the hill climbing, but got a lot of work to do on the skills, so I've just been going out and doing a lot of the trails that I'm scared of and trying to get faster.
Well, you know what we have to do is we have to get you on the break ace. And we are working on arranging that to help you learn how to improve your skills, brake more effectively, and especially on that trail, hot cross buns.
Yeah.
That's definitely going to be in the race.
Buns. Yeah. So I've been practicing that one pretty hard.
Okay, I said...
On my new bike. Should add that in.
Yeah, on your new cool cross-country bike. I said you can't get too fast because we still need to leave some room for you to improve on hot cross buns when we get you on the break ace, but I'm pretty confident we can do it anyways.
Well, we've still got Kung Fu Walrus as well.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that one.
So don't worry. There's always new places to go.
Cool. So how can we stay up to date with what you're up to?
Probably just listen to the podcast. I'm not really that active on social media or anything. I don't know. I don't think you really need to stay up to date, but if I do anything interesting, I'm sure we'll say it on the podcast.
Yeah, cool. Maybe what we'll do is we'll check back in with you after the Walk 100.
Sweet.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. Tell Jimbo we said hi, and we'll catch you soon. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to our interview with Emma O'Connor. I hope you found that really insightful. I know I really wanted her to open up about some of the nitty-gritties, and I think she did a little bit, and I hope you found that really insightful. What I wanted to do quickly before we sign off is to give you a little bit of a teaser on a course that Will and I are going to be offering soon. So we are going to be offering a multi-day course on how to coach yourself. So we are working out the details now, and this will be offered anywhere in the world, and anyone will be able to sign up for it. And we are going to teach you science-based self-coaching. So watch out for details on the self-coaching course. We will have details on social media, and of course, we'll be keeping you up to date on the podcast. So until next week, Will, everyone, we'll see you then.